Hi, I'm Tara Sutphen,
And I'm Matthew Engel.
and Matthew Engel is an amazing astrologer and hypnotherapist. And I'm also an astrologer and hypnotherapist. And we've come to you because we are going to do classes and we would like to theorize on different astrology topics. How about you, Matthew?
Our intention with this series is to dive into different facets of astrology, adding richness and depth to interpretation, strategies, looking at different things that are going on in the world, looking at different facets of a natal chart, progressions, transits, relationships, and all different themes that we're all dealing with in the world. And the first topic that we want to look at is the US Sibley Chart, which is based on the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And that is an astrological chart that is cast for the embodiment of the evolution of the United States as a living, breathing, evolving being that affects us collectively.
It's going to be fascinating, and we are both professional psychics as well. And so we will try to put some of that also into the reading of the charts for you.
Sure.
Anyway,
a big bulk of my
welcome to
practice.
Trine.
Thank you. A big bulk of my practice also is comprised of counseling and coaching. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. And Tara, of course, is a world-renowned author and metaphysical teacher, speaker, healer of just Tara, you've got so many different tools that that you've studied and practiced for decades. So we're really excited to bring this series to you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Sure.
And Matthew is my counterpart. So we are going to enjoy giving you these classes.
For more information about me, you're welcome to look at my website, which is matthewengel.com, MATTHEWENGEL.com. And Tara, your website is?
TaraInsight.com. TaraInsGIGHT.com.
Terrific. Thank you. So we are looking at the US Sibley Chart. Actually, yes. You know what? So we are looking at the US Sibley Chart, and the data on that is July 4th, 1776, 5:10 p.m., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Tara, do you want to dive in and talk about some of the salient themes that you that stand out for you in the US Sibley Chart, and we'll get some dialogue going.
You know, yeah, there is a lot of Cancer, which means that we are a family in a bigger way than we think. And so we're at 13 degrees Cancer. Our Jupiter sits right next to it, which means that we're very lucky together. And then on top of that, there is the Venus. And so we are truly in love with our country. And so that's right there is really what stands out for me. It's just really remarkably beautiful, and that we really want to care about each other. And so what do you feel, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm looking at that stellium of Cancer because we've got the sun in Cancer at roughly 13.5 degrees, 13 degrees, Jupiter in Cancer at just shy of 6 degrees, Venus in Cancer at 3 degrees, all in the 7th house of marriage and partnerships. Then, of course, a little further along, a little further away, but still within the same house, we've got Mars and Gemini, also in that 7th house of partnerships. And the 7th house of partnerships is also ruled by Gemini in this case, because we've got Gemini on that 7th house cusp. So I agree with you. I mean, I think we are in love with this country. There's a patriotism. There's also a very protective quality. People really come together within their groups, whether it's their literal family or their chosen family. They're protective of one another. There's a nurturing quality. There's also, I think, a way that we are the nurturers or the breadbasket for the world. And certainly the US has historically provided a significant amount of aid in a very Cancerian, caring way. And, you know, I think it's also interesting to look at that Jupiter-Venus conjunct, which is actually really close to Sun. I think that also shows how we can really go overboard with our materialism. And then we also put Pluto and the South Node, Pluto and Capricorn at 27.5 degrees in the second house of material values and self-worth. The South Node in Aquarius in the second house. And I think with that Venus, Jupiter, Sun conjunct, you know, there's a lot of focus on materialism. There's a lot of focus on image.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's materialism. I would say it's nesting. We want to create the perfect homes and the perfect, you know, activities for ourselves. I mean, it's really quite remarkable, really. This chart is remarkable when it comes to that. And then, you know, we have the midheaven there at 1 degree Libra, which is, you know, putting us into the ultimate beauty and harmony, you know, that we want everything to be quite utopian. Yeah. And then it hits that, well, you know, and it's not conjunct, but that 12 degrees Gemini that's on the 7th house cusp certainly puts us all together that we should talk things through, that we should be communicators, that we should plan and not just jump into things.
That mercurial quality of
feel.
Gemini you're speaking of, we're talking, communicating, thinking it through.
Right. And the conjunct on that is the Uranus is there with that 7th house cusp. And that just shows that, you know, we should, all of us that are, you know, it's all different, all religions, you know, races, creeds. I mean, hey, look at that. You know, we should all be getting along. I mean, in a general sense, that is quite remarkable in itself. That, you know, it doesn't matter how unusual anybody is. It's, you know, it's all to come together to be in camaraderie because of all that beauty in that 7th house. That's really quite amazing.
Yeah, the Uranian quality, the Aquarian quality of Uranus there. I love how you articulated, you know, coming together. The Aquarian quality of Uranus is, which is on that 7th house cusp, really speaks to the collective and a focus on the collective consciousness, the collective needs, looking at the needs of different communities, different groups. You know, the country was founded based on the principle that all people are created equal. Of course, there is a shadow side to that we are hashing out, and we will definitely get into some of those facets perhaps later today, and certainly a little later on in the series as we pick apart the US Sibley chart a little further. What I think is also interesting with that Gemini placement on the 7th house, you know, because there is a divisive quality to Gemini. That's the shadow side of Gemini. And if you think about it, you know, Americans love to argue.
Yes.
You know? And our political and social consciousness has also been very divided throughout all of US history, you know, with parties and factions and opposition, and so on and so forth. So I think that shows up as well. On one hand, you know, the strength that you highlighted in terms of the mercurial quality of Gemini on that 7th house cusp, and the Mars placement there, that we do have communication skills, but, you know, the more challenging side of Gemini is that there can be a divisive quality. And then Mars and Gemini also in that house, heated arguments and battles. So I think we are learning to listen to each other. And I think we're learning with all of that beautiful Cancerian energy to have a level of, you know, empathic attunement to the needs of the other.
Yeah, but it says, you know, in and the eighth house, you know, it comes back together with,
Mm,
you know, our communication skills are again still in Cancer. And
mhm,
so it's all about really bringing back our unity as a
mm.
group, as a family, as a, you know, country. And it says that it's such a strong, I mean, there are such strong aspects because the part of fortune sits there. Um, and you have your south nodes that sit there as well in charity. And
Well, the south node being in Aquarius and the opposite house, the second house, the north node in Leo.
oh
And
yeah, the north node. Oh, so it's a good luck. It's double good luck. Sorry. So, you know, I mean, we are able to work it out. We are able to work it out.
I think it
Yes.
also, when I think about Leo on the north node, as we have in the eighth house here at 6.5 degrees,
Yes.
when I think about charts with Leo in the north node, I really think about Leo as ruling the heart chakra,
Yeah.
coming into divine love,
Well, and that's a
where
pretty charitable, a charitable aspect right there. That's 60.
sure, sure. And I think
Yeah.
part of the evolutionary journey with the North Node in any chart being part of the soul evolutionary journey and the destiny path is that part of the way that we can solve conflicts within this country and even in our partnerships and interactions with other countries, other nations, other groups, is when we dial that back, the focus back to love
Yeah, it's
rather
very
than,
compassionate. I mean, that's in a
right,
house of Scorpio. So all that Cancer sits, you know, it's all in trine. So, you know, you have really a simpatico there. To whereas
right.
you're, even if there's that divisive on the Gemini, I'm thinking you're coming back into being a compassionate person or a compassionate, you know, group in that eighth house. And, you know, I mean, we see that, you know, we tend to champion others very highly,
Mhm.
and our children, we are all about the children of tomorrow. And that's where probably education steps in, and we want everybody to have the very best because of those aspects. And then we come down to the sixth house there, where it's 22 degrees Taurus. So man, we are materialistic. I mean, we definitely want everybody to work and everybody to try their best and go. I mean, because it's funny, you know, that part of fortune and our speaking ability sits, you know, on a big aspect of busyness. And so here it is, and then you go to the sixth house, and boy, is it like chop, chop, chop. Come on, chop wood, carry water. We are gonna work. And even all those unusual, because that sixth house Uranus there. And so we have a lot of bosses and we have a lot of people coming together, but it's all about really structuring that we're gonna build. And that's
Mhm.
building houses, building buildings, building lives, building structure within the human, you know, foundation.
Mm. I
Yeah.
think that ties in also, with that Uranus sixth house in Gemini,
Mhm.
Uranus and Gemini in the sixth house, with
Right.
the moon in Aquarius in the third
Mhm.
house. When you were talking about building communities, building houses, if the third house is our local community and our neighborhood, and the moon in Aquarius, I mean, we have a need to come together. We have a need to build community, to build neighborhoods, to build infrastructure, to be able to communicate through data, through roads. Certainly a big part of the foundation of the US, was building, railroads and then freeways. And, this is of course over time, not in 1776 per
Mhm.
se,
Well,
but
yeah, no,
infrastructure.
but it's the embodiment of what a group of people came in and decided that America would be, and
Right.
it just happened to be on, you know, where we need to build and be a family. And man, it really says that, you know.
Even in the earliest doctrine, that manifest destiny
Yeah.
approach in the early US, like expanding, and that belief that we're expanding our neighborhoods, we're expanding our land, that literally just kept spreading across the continent. Um,
Right. And we show our best selves when we're actually talking about the future and planning for the future. That is the best thing for us, and to plan for individuals, for people who are in need, and for the bottom of the project to the top, that it's not just all the steps need to be like filled in there. That's what that says. And then you don't have Pisces. You don't have any of the Pisces charts where, Pisces can be so watery and, sometimes a future unknown. And the thing is with Pisces there, it sits in that house where everybody's maybe artistic. They have deep thought, deep understanding. There are a lot of ideas going around, but then it sits, the IC there then sits in first
1 degree Aries. Yeah.
Wow. And so it's saying, okay, well, with all those ideas, let's just put them into action.
Yeah.
Because that's action. And then the action is in the house of the home. So we're all supposed to be active in the home.
Tara, just going back to the third house, one thing I'm
Yes.
thinking about is, and this hadn't occurred to me before, even though I've looked at this chart quite a few times. Going back to some of those deep thoughts and Pisces being, in that third house, it's actually intercepted. Pisces is intercepted in the third house there. What would be your take on the significance of the interception with Pisces in that third house? Particularly because we've got Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune, and in that mercurial house of Gemini.
Well, that's where I was saying that I felt that, that it was a house where it's an unknown. Pisces is it's the end of the zodiac. And so it's an unknown. And it's the end of things. To whereas, but it's about having such deep thought and deep understanding, and the artistic ability, and hospitals, and anything that has to do with life, and really the not so great aspects of life as well. It's all talked about. Like, we don't leave any stone unturned in this country. Everything's talked about, but really what the symbol is of all of it is that we're going to come back into camaraderie, because there's a natural love and having really good feelings and good compassion. But it's to take all of those ideas and every constructive idea that we have into that first degree Aries, because the first degree Aries is the IC, which means that from the past, we bring in what we need. And so what we need at that aspect is a just new slate to completely create what it is within our structure again, because that goes into the house of Cancer. But the Cancer, we have a stellium in Cancer. It's all about that we are going to create a great group, family, group, all our states, our cities and states, and our nation, because that's what the Sibley Chart, the Constitution, that was all signed right then. And so, that's the order.
Point I want to go back to also with that 1 degree Aries point at the IC, which of course is the fourth house cusp, also called the nadir or nadir, depending on pronunciation that people choose. I think about, because the fourth house, the IC is the foundation. It's some of what we inherit from our family, from our culture. And there's karma around that. And it's the beginning and ending of all things as well. And in that fiery sign of Aries, as a nation, we had to fight to break free and to have that independence, which of course is how the country was founded to begin with. But I think on some level, we also have to keep fighting for our ideals. We have to keep revisiting, like, what was the purpose of this country? What was the intention of the Constitution? What was the intention of the amendments? What was the intention of our founding fathers? What were we breaking free from? And I think that really brings us back to some of the, like the purpose of how we came to be who we are as a country in its birth. And there's wounding there because we've got Chiron, which of course is the archetype of the wounded healer in Aries in that fourth house. A transit that we can talk about another time is that we're actually getting into the US Chiron return in Aries. Because right now in transit, Chiron is right at about 14 or 15 degree Aries. So we're revisiting some of that earlier wounding and hopefully bringing light to that as well. And I think that brings a level of fear around the urge to protect the family, to protect the group, to protect the relationship, to fight for what we feel is right, and just the overall sanctity of that foundation.
Right. And that's all the changes that now all the different people I feel that coming into that group. And that's where we get the wounding by not being open enough and not being constructive enough, because, you know, it could be too fast, too hard. We're not, you know, taking a gentle approach. We're taking maybe a harsh approach. So always take a gentle approach on whatever anybody is going through, because that would probably help us all to know that whatever the healer, you know, that we heal, it's our decision to heal others. And so, you know, it's putting our best foot forward and not stirring trouble. No stirring trouble.
Right.
So,
What's also interesting, I think, at the top of the chart where we've got Libra at midheaven, in many ways, we are the peacemakers or the peace bringers to the world. You know, where we're so often involved in assisting with negotiations and NATO and partnering with other countries and so on and so forth. And yet with that Aries on the bottom of the chart, there is a lot of fighting internally. There is a lot of unrest that's we're always going to kind of come back to internally at our foundation.
They were in, you know, before that, they were in terrible unrest. So
Absolutely.
that's what that shows too, that they went in from, you know, turmoil to utopia.
Right.
So we're to be in utopia, and utopia says this is what we put ourselves, you know, we actually include ourselves, and that we talk it out.
Right.
You know, we were mature enough to actually, you know, make a difference.
Or at least we're learning to do that as part of our soul evolutionary journey.
Yeah, we all are learning, but yeah,
right, it's part of our our karmic process.
Yeah, to be doing as a group, as a, you know, this is talking about us as a group, not just as an individual, but it's showing that you belong, that you can belong just as long as you step into it.
Right. I want to go back for a moment. We were talking about that nodal journey with North Node in Leo in the 8th. I mean, with the 8th house, we really do need to delve into a depth of understanding. And with that North Node in Leo, when we come back to a vibration of love and can see another person, another perspective, another nation, another group, another race, another sexual orientation, another gender, another culture as a being of light.
Yes.
Of coming of the divine light, heart to heart. That I think also really offers profound opportunity for healing and transformation. When we can communicate, you know, going back to that Gemini on the 7th house cusp, when we can communicate with the other from a heartfelt place, that's where we start to hear each other. It's where we start to empathize with each other. It's where we start to nurture each other and care about each other. And it is very personal with all that Cancer. You know, our interactions with one another are very personal. And if you think about that around the way that people protect their communities, their groups, their religious orders, their cultural groups, their neighborhoods, for better, for worse, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, people are very protective. It's like there's that sense of how similarities and differences become very personal for people. And when we dial it back to love, that's how we start. That's where we do, I think, really become the peacemakers in the world. We have the capacity to be the peacemakers and the bringers of peace, which Libra offers at midheaven, and also with Saturn in Libra in the 10th house, which is the world stage, our public demeanor, our public presence.
Yeah. So, and it can show us quite in our very lawful and respectful and beautiful, but yet sometimes, that can be because it is Saturn. So we have to be careful since it is in the 10th house of where we need to go and how we need to structure things.
Right.
Because of that, Saturn is a little karmic.
Right.
We're dealing with a little good and a little bad on the progress level.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting because that Saturn in Libra in the 10th is opposite, just a little more than 5 degrees, that 4th house Chiron in Aries. And if you think about how, Libra also affects law, justice, order. And if you think about the Constitution and our representative democracy, that was something that really set the stage in the public sense for the world. We have a government that was founded in its earliest stages as something that was modeling fairness, equality, justice, reason, taking into consideration fairness for all. And there's a lot of karma around playing that out and being teachers for the world in the public sense, because 10th house is where we're going, but it's also our public presence or persona. Yet it's opposite that 4th house Aries. So it's like this parallel process where we're modeling it for the world, but we're also hashing it out from our continued karmic wounding internally and on a local level with that 4th house Chiron and Aries.
Yeah. And the because it's opposition, and this is where you're crying, in the night, the wounded healer would be really more the nighttime than the daytime, from the standpoint of, your face to the world, your career, how we are seen as a nation is more on that 10th house level of 14 degrees Libra. And that's why we attract so many people. And yet not everybody is meant, for America. The world is a vast and beautiful place. We love everything about the world. So it just says that, it's not for everybody, even though everybody sometimes thinks of it as a utopian type of place. It's they want you, as soon as you get here, is to work really hard. You can talk it out and you can have a great family, but you're building, and we're structuring these lives, and it just shows that. So yeah. And how about the 5th house of 29 degrees Aries?
Yeah, really close, because we've got 29-48 there. So we've got double houses, because we've got Aries 1 degree Aries on the IC, the 4th house cusp, and then we've got 29-48 Aries on the 5th house cusp.
Didn't
with
that
no planets in that 5th house.
I know. Or that really in the 4th house for that big stretch, that whole stretch of Aries is like, get busy. That Aries is all about movement, and man, it's move. And then you go into and it's almost a stretch to that 5th house. It went to 22. So you have building, security, money, there's no planets in that house, but it's all about that. We are very inspirational and about money and security, and that we tend to create it. It's not about planning for it. It's about actually creating it when it's in Taurus.
We were talking about the chart with Taurus on the 6th house cusp.
Well, yeah, and that you're at 29 degrees, almost at 0
Almost at,
Taurus
right.
on that 5th house cusp. So,
Right.
you know, it's a building. We're still again in that building phase.
Right. And given that the 5th house is the Leo house in a natural chart, and we've got North Node in Leo, do you think that part of our destiny path is that we are learning how to build that security, building that very solid Taurean foundation? That would be, and also 5th house, it affects children and future generations. So we're learning how to lay that foundation of stability for the future generations.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you're with the program or you're not. I mean, because this chart says that, you know, I mean, it's like a cement chart. I mean, it's really interesting as far as I don't know if you could have almost a better chart for a nation. It's really great. I mean,
it's a very powerful chart.
The universe was really in flow,
right?
When it was made. There's no doubt about it.
I think with 6th Taurus on that 6th house cusp, also, you know, you were talking about working and stability. 6th house affecting health and resources. You know, we have such power to be able to care for the earth and develop an infrastructure that does. And of course, the shadow side of Taurus is laziness and excess and consumption, and we definitely have that. But when we get into the transformative qualities of Taurus, we really do have the power to be able to build infrastructure and build wellness structures of body, mind, soul. That could be healthcare, it could be eco-friendly practices and businesses that really are honoring the earth. With the bright side of Taurus.
Right. And I'm thinking, well, it's so interesting that then it goes to at 22 degrees Taurus on the 6th house cusp.
On the 6th house cusp,
Not only is that a master number, but it also comes in and says, oh, these are, you know, 22 on is like build. Like, I mean, they are so intense about building. It's very, very intense. So you know, I'm not surprised sitting there in the 6th
where
house.
Taurus can go to excess, you know, there can be that greed too. You can sort of have, you know, and I think that can be even where we get into like sort of the 99% movement and all that kind of stuff, where Taurus wants to kind of take all the resources, but then it also offers opportunity, particularly with going back to a point you made much earlier with Uranus in that 6th house. So though it's in Gemini, when we start to think about the collective and the needs for all, we have the power, we have the resources.
We do.
To distribute.
Right. And then the 10th house connects with the descendant there at 12 degrees, you know, and so you think, wow, you know, you're going right into, whereas, you know, it's all about, again, others and the group and creating that synergy between us. But again, you know, with the Taurus and the Libra there, it's saying that, you know, we're going to go back into beauty and we're going to fight for it. We're going to fight for beauty over excess or too crazy. We're just going to do it.
Right. And that, you know, that's really being very heavily activated now. And we'll get into this when we talk about in a subsequent session, when we talk about some of the current transits, but that that Aries at the bottom of the chart with Chiron in Aries, with Saturn in Libra in the 10th, it's all been very heavily activated through transits with Chiron, Pluto in recent years and over the course of the next several years. I'd love to go back to that 2nd house.
Yeah, that's
we've got Pluto 27.5 degree Capricorn, Pluto 27.5 Capricorn in the 2nd house. of money,
Right.
worth, values, material values. Pluto, I am such a Pluto person.
Mhm.
For those of you who know a little bit about astrology, I playfully say that Pluto is my obsession. I just think it's so fascinating in the way that it offers not just opportunity, but necessity to purge the darkest shadow with
Right.
the opportunity to give rise to the brightest light through rebirth. I mean, Pluto highlights polarity. And when a Pluto transit is being activated in a chart, when we're working with Pluto energy, in my experience, Tara, I'm curious to hear yours on this. I tend to see the shadowy stuff start to come out first. It's the power struggles where we're holding on to the old structure, the dying structure, the hierarchy, the
Yes.
the misuse of power and the oppression, the lies, the secrecy, the stuff that's tucked beneath the surface. All of this is
Well,
very,
that would definitely be the aspect as well.
yeah.
Yes.
And we certainly have a lot of greed, a lot of misuse of financial power in this
Yeah.
country.
Well, and you have your south node there, but
Right.
luckily it
It's an
isn't close,
Aquarius.
and it's an
Right.
Aquarius. Yeah.
Right.
Luckily it's not close. So it looks close when we're looking onto the chart here, but
Right.
it's
Looking
not.
at a chart, but we've got it's 6 degree,
Yeah.
the south node, 6 Aquarius versus 27.5.
Yeah.
Pluto, and also keeping in mind because Pluto moves so slowly. If we were talking about
Right.
personal planets, a 9 or 10 degree orb, and the difference would be close. But to your
Right.
point, because it's Pluto, which is moving so slowly, that 9 or 10 degree difference,
Yeah.
that's years away in terms
Yeah.
of the movement.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that
And
south node in Aquarius does give us a ray of hope to be able to think about and have awareness of the needs of the collective consciousness, the needs of
yeah,
the collective, rather.
I would say that. Now, you know what I would say too with that is that, all our different movements, because you can see the different movements
Right,
throughout history
right,
on when people wanted to be different in this country. We're not
right,
talking about the world, we're talking about the US.
right,
To where is it kind of it gave it a little jet fuel.
right.
We're all seeing, there's a lot of little factions that are seen as really like let's take the the 60s times.
Mhm,
That was really, I mean, and that would be fun to look at where Pluto was at that point, where
mhm.
the different planets were, because it, like why did it become such a shining time?
Right,
Why were people so interested?
right,
So but that 6 degrees Aquarius there would say that, oh, that would highlight some of those. And whether you thought it was good or bad, you're definitely, some people would be madly in love with it, and some people would think that they had karma with it, with the 20
right,
degrees.
right.
But again, we're building. So it would be building it into a right direction and not a wrong direction.
Absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
that's the bottom line, is that jet fuel of Pluto. I always think of it as jet fuel, and
Right,
it either can destroy you or it's going to make you, in
right,
and whatever aspect it is. But at 27 degrees Capricorn, I mean, it's building. You're building again. I mean, it's allowing everybody to build as a group. It's in the second house. It's at 27 degrees, so it's all about the unity of creating that for others, creating the structure of money and security into with so many people.
mhm.
So we have it as a group.
We
Yeah.
do. Tara, you mentioned a few minutes ago the 60s, and what was going, you referenced that it would be interesting to look at what was going on with Pluto. There was a
Yeah.
several-year period in the 60s during the civil rights era,
Yeah.
civil rights movement, when Pluto and Uranus in transit collectively were conjunct in Virgo. So if you think
Interesting.
about, the purging and the restructuring and the collective and communities and every, factions coming together and organizing. We had, the civil rights era. You can look at an earlier era, women's suffrage, people coming together and really advocating for their worth, for their value in society. And that is a big part of what the second house embodies. I mean, I think mundane astrologers often refer to the second house as if it's only the money house, but it gets into issues of self-worth and self-value. And how we assign that not just through monetary value, but also through inner value.
And then as a group, we go to the ninth house and
yes,
look, we are ambitious.
Leo on that ninth house cusp. Yeah.
24 degrees Leo. We're an ambitious lot.
Yeah.
Ambitious.
Yeah.
And then it goes into 22 degrees. Where that is, that 22 degrees Virgo is very much about
with Neptune.
Yeah, Neptunian energy that, we can, where many people are important, like down to the mayor, down to the, whoever's in charge of a corporation or a company, there's a lot of like little chiefs because of that Neptune. The Neptune puts us into who's going to lead the group. And boy, there's just so many chiefs or little kingdoms around. And it's all of an illusion, because Neptunian energy is that, but it's at a master number. So it means that
22 degrees, there we have that 22 again. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all building. It's a building process. And that's, conjuncts your Pluto at that point, that. So we're just always thinking of utopia.
Trine's the Pluto.
Beautiful. Trine's it too.
Neptune and Pluto. Neptune at 22, 25, and Pluto at 27.5 roughly. So that Neptune Pluto are in a trine, really interesting, between second house and ninth house.
Yeah, that's wild.
With Neptune in Virgo,
goes to
Neptune
Mars.
being in the opposite sign of Neptune's rulership, because of course Neptune rules Pisces and it's in the sign of Virgo, that also offers an opportunity for discernment and compassion as we step into higher learning and can bring that into leadership. And that's where, that compassion of Neptune and the discernment in the form of Virgo in this case, I think can really work in unison with that second house Pluto. We have a lot of resources to really build infrastructure that would be equitable, that would be available. I think that's part of what we're really working out, how to use our resources, how to use our power structures.
Well, and that's true because it squares the Mars. That's why I was like,
oh yeah, look at that with 21 Mars in Gemini squaring Neptune. Yeah, do you want to say more about that? Square?
that would be, like all your little chiefs. Again, there's arguments. There's going to be your arguments on who needs to run the show and what things are, good and what things are bad. And the bottom line is it's all going to come out in the wash because we all don't want to really destroy things. But but there is like a little bit of a tug of war there.
Right.
Of who should be what.
Of who should be what. And Neptune makes it elusive. I love how you said there are a lot of chiefs. Particularly because ninth house is, whereas the third house would be the lower courts, locals stuff. That ninth house gets into the upper courts and bigger government, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, government. It gets into just groups. Your environment.
Right. I think Neptune can also bring going back to the elusiveness, can bring questions and fear. If you think about like McCarthyism in the 50s, I don't remember right now exactly what was going, but we were in
Right.
in a difficult Neptune transit at that time. So it was bringing out the fear and the projection and the, the fear of governments around the
We'll have to
world and where
do,
our government
yeah.
stood. And that led to the Cold War. And, it was actually part of the Cold War era.
Wow. We'll have to do some really good, events like that and show where, the US Sibley
Right.
came along in that.
I have a question, because
Yeah.
going back to, the tug, I love how you framed it, like the tug of war and the arguments with Mars in Gemini in the 7th, squaring that 9th house Neptune in the 9th, but that Mars is also in a quincunx to that 2nd house Pluto. When I think about a quincunx, I think about where there's always kind of an inherent challenge with two different bodies of energy, where it always feels like there's two parts that are somehow mutually exclusive. It's always some kind of a conflict or a blind spot that you kind of keep coming back to. Would you add to that a little bit?
But I almost would say that there's no fuel to that.
Say more about that.
Goes, so there you go, your Pluto, your car ran out of gas. There's nothing, you're not going anywhere with it. Because
would you say more about how it ran out of gas?
Yeah.
Just because Pluto's got so much energy and Mars is that warrior.
Right. So yeah, you were mad and you got in your car, but there was no gas in your car to go anywhere. So that's because the illusion was that, I need to be right. I need to be right about something. So that's where, and that can be too, where maybe you have really good ideas sometimes and you're ready to put them into action, but yet you don't get to go anywhere with it because you're, it's not the right aspects. You don't have the right aspects to be able to put your activation on your physical, urgency to create something that moves in that direction.
So
your
life
will be, it has to be a mutual activation at that
with the mutual exclusivity of the quincunx. What I hear you saying is that there's not a well-formed argument or a well-formed fight.
Right.
You don't have the torque to be able to say, all right, we're arguing or we're bickering, and here's an organized synthesis of what this fight is about and what we're pursuing. It just, I love how you framed it then, where you get in the car and there's no fuel there.
Right. So the thing is, though, that, so you have to have a lot of, there has to be a lot of justification to actually go into an area of a problem. Because what it says generally is this group, which is America, is not going to just necessarily follow. They'll follow to a certain degree, but you the torque, if it isn't the right, they'll pull out. Sooner or later, there's, because there'll be another chief that comes in. So that
a lot of changes.
Really interesting. It's a really interesting dynamic that's getting set off there
with Neptune. We've got, going back, I love how you just said there's going to be there'll be a different chief. We've got Neptune rules Pisces. We've got mutable energy there, and it's in Virgo, which has a transformative quality, not in the way that Pluto does, but Virgo is going through purification. It's going through change. So it's a constant change in government, a change in leadership.
And then it says that anyway, the aspect there at 22 degrees Virgo is all about the change anyway, that somebody they get to be there for a second, but they don't, change.
But they don't stay.
Out. Yeah.
But they don't stay.
There's no staying power. Yeah.
Right. And that's interesting. If you think about even, like political parties and factions and, conservatism versus liberalism or any of that stuff. It's always a changing pendulum. Goes from one to the other, and nothing is really, the only thing that's stable in it is that it's always changing.
Right.
And Americans love to argue about it.
Yeah. Well, and then you get in that 10th house, you have again, the 1 degree Libra to the 29 degrees Libra. I mean, how beautiful is that?
Right,
I mean, that whole 10th house is Libra energy.
right,
Yeah.
right. So we're working on seeing that perspective and understanding and relativity
Yeah.
of Libra,
Yeah.
the other perspective, and this karmic work to do around it.
Right.
When I use the word karma, I don't think of it as punishment. I don't think of it as hardship and struggle in the in that negative way. I think of it as like, okay, here's the work we're doing.
Right.
Our work is cut out for us. We're doing the work around our partnerships and our relationships and understanding the other and coming into an agreement that that weighs and balances the needs of the collective. Again, going back to, you brought up Uranus,
Yeah.
which is close to that house of partnership down there. And then we've got Moon in Aquarius, again, that wants to think about, that needs to think about the needs of everybody
Yes.
and differences. And the
Well, and
South
then
Node in
we get the
Aquarius
needs of
too.
everybody met within the 11th house of 29 degrees Libra.
Mhm.
And it goes again to almost all of Scorpio there,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's almost at 0 degree Scorpio.
Right.
In 15 minutes it would have been, or 12 minutes it would have been Scorpio.
On the 11th house cusp.
Yeah, on the
Yep.
11th cusp, and then it goes into Scorpio. But the 11th house cusp is all about, really all about other people, again,
Right.
in groups of people.
Right.
And so since it's connected to that 8th house of Cancer and it has such great aspects on it, everybody likes to talk. Boy, no wonder, their coffee houses and everything became so popular. And because everybody really likes to talk in this country.
Yes.
So the thing is that so friendships are formed by communicating with others.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the bottom line for Americans. And then at the 12th house cusp, we have 22 degrees Scorpio.
Scorpio.
And wow, nothing like teaching and learning. So we wanted, so deep down within this chart, when it was formed, there was a intention that it would become another Rome, another, a Greece, that another Egypt, another, I mean, all the great civilizations of the world. I mean, we have it in our minds that it will become, and it's at a master number there.
Do you think that there's that 22 degrees again?
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting that we've got the replication of those master numbers? We've got 22 degrees Scorpio on the 11th house cusp. I'm sorry, on the 12th house cusp. We've got Neptune in 22 degrees, and keep in mind that 12th house is the Neptune house.
Yeah.
There's an interrelationship there.
Right. And weren't they all Masons?
Right. They played a significant role in the foundation. Yep. And then we've got that 22 degrees
Somebody did
on the
up this
6th
chart.
house cusp. Yeah.
Yeah. This was his time to sign. Anyway, yeah. And then you have nice Sagittarius there, 12 degrees on the
ascendant.
On the ascendant, which gives its freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is supposed to be free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And creatively free.
Creatively free.
Philosophically free. Freedom of speech. Freedom of expression.
Yes.
I think that, when we get into the, particularly the first 10 amendments, I think that they, on so many levels, really speak to Sagittarius rising, where all of these freedoms were named.
Yeah, that's freedom of speech and freedom of self, and
right,
physically free.
Freedom of the press and freedom to lobby and freedom to, to have your voice.
Freedom to learn.
Right. Right. Freedom to learn. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned a moment ago some of the I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but sort of like a soul level intention or the karmic intention or the similarities to some of the old, great, expansive civilizations, powerful civilizations like ancient Greece, Rome, Egypt, and so on and so forth. So does that mean that we're destined to rise and fall as those ancient civilizations did?
Well, I think that would be a good topic in as we go along, is to look at that. I don't see that from the Pluto, from this Pluto.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, the Pluto is at 27 degrees Capricorn.
Mhm,
So it's always going to be about really constructively building.
mhm.
So, there can be some arguing here and there, but what's going to win out really is that Pluto in the second house.
Because Capricorn wants to build for sustainability.
Yeah. And it's building to stay.
I would be
So
curious.
between the sixth house and that, it's really building to stay.
Something I'd be curious about, and I'm not exactly sure how we would get an exact chart on this. We could only look at it based on historical eras, but it has me wondering if perhaps some of those old powerful civilizations and governments that rose and then fell, if perhaps there was something either involving Pluto or Pluto Uranus that may have been in more of a mutable sign.
Right.
Where all of this incredible power, and we could probably research that. I don't know that there would be a founding chart to be found per se,
Right, on
located how do we identify the founding of ancient Greece? I don't know that there's a moment of that.
No, or even an end. There could be an end, but not a beginning.
Right, like a downfall where it was lost power, whether it was ancient Greece or
Yeah.
Rome or Egypt. I mean, I think there were certain battles that could be identified, like where Rome fell and so on and so forth, but that was also gradual over hundreds of years and eras. But I do love that your point about how Pluto is seeking to restructure.
Mm-hmm.
And it wants to build something that we can that is sustainable.
Yeah.
With Capricorn, as we were both acknowledging in there.
Yeah, and I would say that too, that south nodes that are right next to, there too, would be saying that, you have to keep like some of the woodlands, and you have to have some forests, and that would be some of that.
Right.
For everybody, because it has to be like a more wide thinking process.
Right.
Not just. I would say that, we're supposed to think our way out of the box.
Right.
When we're having a problem.
And we have great capacity to do that. I'm looking where we've got Saturn in Libra at 14 degrees, which is trining the south node in Aquarius, another air sign. And then that's also trining Uranus in Gemini. So actually we've got a grand air trine in here with Saturn, south node, and Uranus.
So we'll unusually kind of come out of it.
Right.
There's always an unusualness that kind of saves the day.
Right. With a grand trine, I mean, there's a real power to transform and keep moving. And in the element of air, we've got great thinkers and strategy that we can implement and manifest from that.
We have a lot of brilliant people.
A lot of brilliant people.
I mean, because that says that there's, and people have worked at it. Worked at that brilliance. It's great.
Yes.
What a lovely chart for the United States.
It is a lovely chart. It's got its challenges. It's got its power differentials. It's got its stuff that it's working through, but there really is a lot of power to transform.
Yeah. We'll look at some of the aspects. We'll go through some of the wars and some of the problem areas in upcoming Matthew and I will look at that, because
Right.
with all of you, because I think that it would be interesting to kind of see where we might have problems and how it was solved,
Right.
because everything's about to solve.
Everything is about a solve. Yes. It's part of the just the continued movement, the continued transformation. So this has been great, Tara. I loved dialoguing with you and being able to just get into a synergy and look at different facets of this chart. It is a really fascinating one.
Mhm.
For more information about psychotherapy, coaching, hypnosis, and astrology for me, you can visit MatthewEngel.com. It's Matthew with 2 T's, Engel. And Tara, for more info about your work, hypnotherapy, astrology, all the wonderful seminars that you teach, the books that you've written, your website is
TaraInsight.com. And
terrific.
CARAINSIGHT.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I look forward to the next
Blessings.
one.
Thank you,
Blessings.
Matthew. Lots of
Thank
love.
you.